And let's go to our next question. Let's see. Well, we'll go ahead and start with Kobuke Sensei this time. And the question is about feedback. How do you provide feedback that's necessary to learn while encouraging students to partake in learner interaction in the online environments?
Um, so in addition to what I mentioned earlier, uh, I have like a scaffolded approach where I have pairs of students when possible. Uh, so usually at the beginning of the semester, we find times where students are able to meet, even if it's asynchronous, uh, to meet with each other via Zoom, to practice tasks or conversations, and then submit the recording. So at one point, the first one, they would submit a video. I use video feedback to respond to that. I'm not able to use extempore for this one because they're not able to record video, uh, pair videos in extempore. And sending a video feedback, student tend to watch it more than if it's like um, a text message within the LMS. So if you have a video, they tend to watch it. So I use the video to provide feedback. And then the next step, I have the students, the same pair of students, go to meet a tutor via Zoom, also via Zoom, to practice and receive feedback from tutors. So the stress level is a little lower when students meet with peer tutors. And then they receive feedback from the tutors and they can compare the feedback they received from me and see if they've made improvements or what they still need to work on. The tutors also, I have them complete like a really short Google form rubric so that I know I'm informed of where the students are at when they meet the tutors. And then the next step would be the oral performance where they would either in pairs or have a conversation just with me. So depending on the level, so if students are more comfortable at this at a level earlier in the semester, then it would be they'll be working in pairs. A little later on, I would have them have a conversation with me. Yeah.
I really like that you touched upon the idea of either working with peer tutors or even just working with peers. I think sometimes we can overlook that as educators because they are getting that feedback from each other. They're also getting feedback potentially from a peer tutor. And sometimes even just hearing something in a different way. I think sometimes we tend to have our own set ways of how we explain things, but when students go in and work with peers, sometimes there's another level or something that might just click with them. So I really like the idea of getting feedback from each other as well as from you, just adding an extra layer of feedback. Thank you so much for that. Nozaki Sensei, let's go to you again. It's going to be the same question about feedback. How do you provide feedback that's necessary to learn while encouraging students to partake in learner interaction in the online environment?
Yeah, so I also apply to the normal in-person strategy as well. So when I give feedback to the students, my biggest goal is to have students to speak out more. So I try not to discourage students by giving a feedback. So to avoid doing that, I do like sandwich method, like so compliment, feedback, and compliment. So start with mention the great point, my good points that students did. Like, for example, yeah, while students are talking, I try to pick up the great points to mention at the first. For example, like some students have a very loud, clear voice and speak out, or even though their grammars are not so perfect, but the student was trying to say very good opinions. So first, I find the good points of the student and give a compliment, and then add one or two small, but for students, but it don't have to be a big feedback, but I have to pick one or two important feedback that is essential to their speech, and also a target grammar or phrases. And then, so while I'm telling the feedback to the students, I try also not to like talking about the students' speech, but also I try to talk to everyone, because probably the student is not the only students to make the mistake. So I try to tell everyone about the feedback, and then going back to the compliment again, but it was a really good opinion overall and so on. So I close with a compliment, and so try to keep a good positive atmosphere in the classroom, so the student will try to speak out more next time as well. And also another important point that I keep in mind all the time is to always wait until students finish their interactions or activities. So this is a great advantage during the online class. So while students are talking each other and interacting, so I take memo like under the screen and list up what I want to mention, and good point as well, and some important feedback and list down. And so after they talk to each other, and then I start with the comment. That was a great interaction. Someone did this, and then just give a feedback to those pairs or like groups, like I'm talking to everyone like about that, and then close with a compliment again. So yes, I do that strategies to give a feedback to the students, and while keeping a good atmosphere, positive atmosphere in the classroom.
It is so important to come from that place of appreciation, because a lot of times, especially I've noticed with students who struggle, it's really hard for them to come out of their shell and kind of take a risk, right? They're giving an answer, they're thinking there's probably a lot wrong with it, and it can be a little scary. But when you really come from that place of appreciation, like you said, Nozaki Sensei, you give them a compliment, then you give the feedback. And it's so important to give that from the growth mindset lens, right? And then we give another compliment to make sure that the students know we really appreciate the work that they're putting forth. Really good strategies. Thank you for that. Maeda Sensei, we'll go to you. And again, it's the same question about feedback. How do you provide feedback that's necessary to learn while encouraging students to partake in learner interaction in the online environment?
Okay, so as Kobuke sensei mentioned, power of the video feedback is so true that yes, I think the research also supports that students tend to pay more attention or watch for the video feedback rather than just simple text feedback. So, but then sometimes it's giving the text feedback makes more sense depending on what kind of tasks you are doing. But particularly for the pronunciations, I use the video feedback and try to encourage them and give them correct model. And also, completely agree with what Nozaki Sensei just said. Give them compliment. So, that encourages students. Now, that AI is also a great way to provide the less stressful environment for practicing the interaction. So we've been talking about use AI so the students can practice the speaking. Then AI always compliment. You said, this is what you said is really great. Your pronunciation is really great. So, and then my students said that they love practicing with AI because one of the reasons is it's providing them less stressful environment. So that is so true. And so video feedback or providing mixture of the feedback type, either video or audio or the text, and also always giving them lots of support and encouragement. Yeah, thank you.
I wonder, did we lose Sarah Sensei?
Yeah, looks like it.
Okay, well, if you guys don't mind, I'll just go ahead and add my my
Go
answer
ahead.
while we're waiting. Okay, so many of you already touched on the points that I was thinking of. The very first thing is having a safe environment for students to feel capable and allowed to make mistakes. So I think that's the number one thing, is setting up that classroom synchronous environment, asynchronous or synchronous environment, where they feel like it's okay to try and take that risk with learning a new language. Just to tell you a little bit about some of my experience, in the past, I was an instructional leader for the department. And so I would see the feedback other teachers would leave. There was one teacher who left, if I were to print it out, it was 3 pages of written feedback on an assignment for one single assignment. And it listed every single error that was in that student's response. Now, she felt the need to tell the student every single thing that the student did wrong, but when you see that volume of feedback you get for one assignment, I think that student probably just felt completely defeated and probably just didn't want to try. That's so much to work on. So the important thing about feedback is to give students information about how to improve, but in a way that's going to help them improve. I don't think that volumes and volumes of feedback on one assignment is the right way to go about it. So figure out what is important, like what were your main targets for that assignment, and give feedback that pertains to those main targets. But if it is 3 pages, then what do you think are the most critical that will help the student in the future on future assignments? So try to look at your feedback in that way. Also, I 100% agree that feedback, it doesn't always need to be written. It could be spoken, it could be video. And I think that's really important. And, what is the goal of your feedback? If you want it to be read by the students, but you find that they're never, ever reading that feedback, we've got to do something to either encourage those students to access it or provide feedback in a different way. Because otherwise, it's frustrating for the teacher who is saying, I've told the student 12 times that, it's not this character, it's that character. But if they're never reading it, it's a waste of the teacher's time and the student is not improving. So we need to look at our feedback and the delivery system and see, is there a better way we could provide feedback? I also agree, work on praising students, not always what they did wrong. Find some good points, even if it's a small thing, focus on those good points. I'm not sure, those of you who use Padlet, anytime you open it up, it says things like welcome beautiful or hello beautiful, or something that just makes you happy and smile. So I think encouraging our students to want to perform well for us, I think, is important. So encouraging them, even if it's for a small thing that they've done well. We do have struggling students who are not yet prepared for the synchronous content that we have. So providing those scaffolding techniques we talked about earlier, providing those in advance, I think will be helpful for your feedback on the end as well, because they can refer back to that scaffolded portion if necessary to see how they could improve based on that. Also one more thing on feedback. A lot of times when students make errors, because I was a Japanese learner myself, I usually know why they made that mistake. So I think it's important for us, if we can, to spend a little bit of time to explain what the correct way would be, but also why. So just saying, oh, it's not this character, it's that character, or it's this word, not that word. I think that if they don't know why, they really won't really acquire that language. It'll just be a one-time, this situation, it was this. But if we can explain why, I think that's really important too. Welcome back, Boutin Sensei.
Oh, thank goodness for the hotspot. It looks like my ISP is out all over my neighborhood based on what I'm seeing on the Wi-Fi settings. My apologies, everyone. But Revae, I caught the last bit of your answer talking about how, and I can certainly relate, I was not a native speaker of Japanese. I learned it as a second language. And so I have made a lot of the same mistakes that my students make, so we can share our experience and also build rapport with them. So really good stuff there. I appreciate you chiming in with that, Revae. And But anyway, I've returned. And I do believe that that was the last of the panelists to chime in on that question about feedback. And that's such an important aspect of what we do with our students. That can definitely be important.